short-term rental stuff it's great. The demand is good. And I know it's good because half of my bookings, Bo, the people have no reviews. You know what that means? That means that's a brand new person that's coming onto the platform. So I see how much the demand is constantly growing. Here's the best metaphor I can give it that everybody can relate to. 10 years ago, everybody didn't use Uber and everybody didn't use Amazon. It was more for people that were maybe a little bit younger. They were more into technology with smartphones. Fast forward 10 years later, my grandma, my grandpa, everybody, they use Amazon and they use Uber and they expect it. That's the thing with short-term rentals. Now when people travel, it doesn't have to be for vacation. They could be going there for work. They could be visiting family. They want to stay in a house instead of a hotel. So the real-time demand of short-term rentals is constantly increasing, and it's increasing like a tidal lake. It's blowing up, just like Amazon and Uber did. And I see this firsthand with all the guest inquiries that I get coming on my platform. So short-term rentals are still great, and they're still here to stay.
All right, we're back here with crush2024.com. Go there and you can get all the 30 days of knowledge bombs. You can also go to our Eventbrite link, and that's going to be a live event at 8 a.m. on January 1st.
Yes.
We've got Alex, we've got Walter, and Vinny, and myself, of course. So if you're not going to be too hungover, January 1st at 8 a.m. in the morning, we're going live, and that'll be a great...
Pacific.
So really, Eric, to give you a little bit of background, Vinny and I were talking one day, and we just came up with this idea to crush 2024. And then my objective was to do a year's worth of work in the first month of January. So January 1st to the end of the month, do enough work where I've done more in that 30-day period than I did in all of last year. We're going to see if that's humanly possible, but we're going to use automations, ChatGPT, and a lot of outsourcing and delegation. But
so that if the first month is good of the year, the whole year is going to go great. It's the momentum that we pick up, right, Eric?
100%. Yeah, you got to start strong and then roll into it.
So that brings us to a good point, because we're here with a top residential mortgage broker who obviously last year wasn't as good as the last couple of years before that, right? So a lot of mortgage people had to transition. A lot of people in the real estate sales space and mortgage space are getting out of the business, which is fine for us seasoned professionals, because we know we have thick skin because we have fat wallets, right? Thick skin means fat wallet. So if you can stay in the game,
can survive. Yeah.
And that's why you have to have multiple streams of income. So today's conversation is going to be interest rate expectations. And Eric also built multiple revenue streams, which is including short-term rentals. We're going to dive into that. And then also Eric is he's a human performance optimization specialist. So we're going to talk about some hacks there, and then some productivity hacks, how he's able to run 6 houses on short-term rentals with 4 hours or less per week. So there's a lot we're going to dive into in the next 10 minutes. So Eric, take it away. What's the expectations for mortgage rates?
All right. So the good news is this: mortgage rates are going to come down. Okay. Right now, in the last 6 weeks, they came down almost a point and a half from 8% down to 6.625, which is huge. That's a large jump. Over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, mortgage rates will continue to decline. And the new lows is going to be about 5%, give or take. For a lot of people think that's high because they got used to the twos and the threes over the last 7 to 8 years. But what people forget, I've been doing this for 21 years, and the majority of the time rates have been about 4 to 5%, which is like normal interest rates. The days of the twos and threes, those were artificially low rates because the government was buying about $40 billion a month of mortgage-backed securities. So essentially the government was buying up all the mortgage bonds to keep rates low because that's one of their main tools to stimulate the economy when they were coming off of the 2010 housing recession, right? They need to stimulate the economy because that was one of the worst recessions of all time. So that's what they did. They bought down the interest rates for about 7 or 8 years. So anybody that got into real estate over the last 7 or 8 years, they think 2 and 3% is normal. It's not normal. So anyways, when rates go back to 5%, that's okay. That's fine. And honestly, now that rates have been at 8%, people are going to be very happy when they come in at 5%. How can I say this with so much certainty? It's because the ultimate driver of mortgage rates is inflation. If you think about it, a 30-year fixed loan, if it's fixed for 30 years, then inflation goes up. Now the value of that loan at the bank goes down. So what does the bank have to do if inflation goes up? They have to raise their rates. And we all know that about a year ago now, everybody knows inflation went up super fast. What happened right behind that? Mortgage rates. So mortgage rates, we could talk about a ton of different factors, but the number one driver, again, is inflation. Now, inflation already came down from its peak of 9%. As of today, it's about like 3.5, 3.6, depending on what metrics you're looking at. So it's already come down significantly. And now rates, they lag behind it. So rates will follow because it takes a while for, when inflation comes down, it takes a while for it to saturate through the market. So that's what I can say with certainty, that rates will come down to these levels over the next 6, 12, 18 months. Because if I show you a graph of inflation and mortgage rates going back to 1920s, they literally mirror each other. They mirror each other with mortgage rates lagging behind inflation. So again, inflation already came down from 9% to 3.5%. So it's not if mortgage rates are going to come down; they absolutely will, and they've already started that downward trend. So that's the good news for everybody.
Fed did say that there'll be 3 cuts coming. I mean, that's what they're predicting, right? Yeah. So that will have also downward pressure. You bet. Excellent.
Absolutely.
Excellent. No,
all right.
Thank you.
Next
so
question.
Now we're going to roll into short-term rental outlook. Like from the outside looking in, it looks like everybody jumped on the bandwagon of like STRs, and they were going into these kind of vacation areas. What it looks like, and I want to get some feedback from an operator, is that the properties that are prime properties are still crushing it. It's the ones that people were buying before that were marginal properties, and they're just not doing as well. Is that kind of your expectations and what you're seeing? And then secondly, where's the opportunity for you? Where are you moving? You haven't bought anything in a while. What's your next buy?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So the current state of short-term rental market is this. There's no Airbnb bust. Like people aren't like, there's not a bunch of vacancies where people are selling their houses and all this drama that the media wants you to believe, right? The media, we all know if it bleeds, it leads, right? So I have all the real stats for all the short-term rental data. And here's the biggest thing that kills the Airbnb bust, thinking that like, short-term rental demand is down. It's too saturated. So everyone's basically, losing their asses and they're going to have to sell their houses. If people were selling their houses, new listing inventory would go up. There would be more homes coming on the market. It's not. That number just keeps going down, 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 and down. So number one, the data shows that this is not true because the new listings are going down, not up. So there's point number one. Point number two is if somebody's short-term rental property isn't doing good, they don't run and try to sell the property and like take a loss, or maybe they won't take a loss. Maybe they'll sell their house for a profit, but think of all the time and effort they put to buy the property, to set it up, to get running. They're not just going to cut ties over 2 or 3 months when they can just go ahead and they can rent it out as a midterm rental, which is still very profitable cash flow. And then if that doesn't work, then they do a long-term rent, which for most people, if they bought a rental property, they put down 20%. And if you put down 20%, you're probably going to break even or go positive a couple $100 a month. So the point is that they can hold these properties. And I know some people that like, they probably weren't doing a very good job running their property. That's another different point here. They weren't doing a very good job running their property. So they're like, hey, I'm done with Airbnb, Eric, but I'm going to rent my property out long-term. I don't know one person that sold their property based on their Airbnb revenue going down. I know a couple of people that just basically converted their properties over to long-term rentals. And here's the last stat I'll leave you with. Only 15% of people on Airbnb are superhosts. That means that 85% of people on Airbnb, they're moonlighters. They're not professionals. It's mom and pa that are just trying it out. They don't have their listing properly updated on the Airbnb website. So they don't know how to hit the algorithm so that their property shows up higher in the search rankings. If someone searches for a property in my area, because I know how the algorithms work, my property is going to show up on the first page. If your property shows up on page 3 of the search, guess who's looking at your property? Nobody, right? Now that's the same house in the same market with the same amenities, right? But if you don't know how to basically like list it properly on Airbnb and have the algorithms push your property up, you're going to get crushed while I do great. So does that mean that there's a problem with Airbnb and there's not a demand? Not at all. It just means there's a lot of people that just jumped in because it was trendy and they didn't do very well. But overall, that's not a lot of people. At the end of the day, what I hear is Airbnb bust. I just hear all this negativity towards short-term rentals. That's not true at all. I have properties in Scottsdale, which is one of the most saturated properties in the country, and they still do good. They still do good. So it's short-term rental stuff it's great. The demand is good, and I know it's good because half of my bookings, Bo, the people have no reviews. You know what that means? That means that's a brand new person that's coming onto the platform. So I see how much the demand is constantly growing. Here's the best metaphor I can give it that everybody can relate to. 10 years ago, everybody didn't use Uber and everybody didn't use Amazon. It was more for people that were maybe a little bit younger. They were more into technology with smartphones. Fast forward 10 years later, my grandma, my grandpa, everybody, they use Amazon and they use Uber and they expect it. That's the thing with short-term rentals. Now, when people travel, it doesn't have to be for vacation. They could be going there for work. They could be visiting family. They want to stay in a house instead of a hotel. So the real-time demand of short-term rentals is constantly increasing, and it's increasing like a tidal wave. It's blowing up, just like Amazon and Uber did. And I see this firsthand with all the guest inquiries that I get coming on my platform. So short-term rentals are still great, and they're still here to stay. And guess what? There's a million places in the country where people like to travel. So, okay, don't go by in Scottsdale. No problem. There's 100 other cities that people like to travel to. So there's a market. There's so many markets to choose from where you can do well. To me, it's a laughable question. You can absolutely still crush it with short-term rentals anywhere.